these things, Tim, how many people will decide to turn up. You
Yes.
never know who will turn up, but yeah, this looks good. You're still at Zayed University, aren't you? Because I know you said you were moving.
Yes.
Still
For
there,
I'm there for another 2 weeks.
but then where are you off to? You said you're back to the Netherlands or back to Europe?
No, I've had a small change in plans actually. And to be honest, the response to the simulation and also my other sustainability related work, you know, it's really moving forward. And I've concluded it's not really possible to have a full-time academic position at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to leave and work, let's say, as an independent. And I will.
Exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting, and I will stay in Dubai, but then, you know, one benefit is I'll have more freedom to spend more time in Europe.
Exciting. And yeah, not a bad idea actually. Sometimes when I look around me in academia at the moment, yeah, not a bad idea.
Yeah, I've been with my current university 15 years.
Yeah.
So I'm now, you know, mentally, it was like a whole journey to make the decision, but now I'm already, before starting, I'm already at peace with it.
Good.
Congrats.
Thank you.
All right, shall we let everybody in?
Yeah, let's
That's
start.
okay
Yeah,
for
why
me.
not?
Yeah.
All right, best wishes, everybody.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. We're just opening the doors and waiting for people to join us. Please, if you feel able to, do pop your cameras on so we can see that we are all real people. See some familiar names here. Hello, Jill. And as usual, we'll wait a few minutes for people to get themselves settled. Hello, Anna. Lavinia's here as well. Tom, Laura, Jeff, Darren. Hello, everybody. Fiswas, Ryan, Rebecca, and Rubana. Okay, Dana, welcome. Majul, hello. Welcome. We still have some people joining, so we'll just wait a little longer. Hi, Majul.
Hello. Hi, Alex. Nice to see you.
And you?
Everyone.
Who else is with? Hello, Nicole.
Hi.
Welcome. And hello, Jennifer, welcome to you.
Hi, thank you very much.
And Jonathan, welcome, Jonathan. Welcome, Gillian. Give it one more minute, maybe till 5 past, and then we'll get started. Fantastic to see so many people from all over the world. Okay. So I think, shall we get started? Tim, are you okay to get started?
Right.
Fantastic. So welcome everybody. Welcome to this Prime Climate and Environment Working Group webinar session today. So happy to welcome so many of you. If you feel able to, please put your cameras on, give us a wave so we can all see that you are here, that you are with us, see your lovely faces from around the world. For those that don't know me, my name is Alex Hope, Dr. Alex Hope. I'm co-chair of the UN Prime Climate and Environment Working Group, alongside my colleague, Professor Petra Moulton-Hill, who can't be with us today, I'm afraid. And we're very pleased and very happy to welcome you to one of our webinar events. We've done a couple of these in the past, and we'd like to do a lot more of them. But today's event really is to showcase the work of Tim Rogmans, who's with us here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce Tim, who's going to take us through the session today. And I'll leave it all to him. He's got a very interactive session for you all to get involved in. So hopefully you will go for that. I'm looking forward to it myself. And then I'll come back at the end and maybe talk a little bit about some of the other things that we're planning to do in the working group over the next few months and going forward. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Tim Rogmans. Tim is an associate professor at Zayed University in the United Arab Emirates, based out of Dubai. Tim's got a background as a management consultant prior to being an academic. And we've just learned that he's going back to doing some consulting. He does a lot of work on simulations, a lot of writing for Harvard around simulations, around CSR strategy and the like, and I'll allow him to introduce himself more fully. But I'm really delighted that Tim reached out to us to ask if we could help promote the work that he's been doing with this business simulation game around net zero and tourism. And I've had the privilege to try it out myself and have a bit of a play around it. It's very interesting, and I hope you will find so too. So without further ado, could I please introduce Dr. Tim Rogmans?
That's great, Alex. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for joining this session. I'd like to thank Alex and Petra and Sian and the other people that are part of the working group. And I'm really happy to have this chance to not only show the simulation, but allow you to play it, because I think that will be the best way for you to see what you think about it, how you might facilitate with it, and also to give me any comments and questions that you have about it. Like Alex mentioned, I've been in academia now for about 17 years. And right from the start, I developed a passion for experiential learning and learning with business simulation games. I have now developed 3 simulations myself, but also use many others. And then over the last 10 years, I got more and more involved in sustainability, sustainability education. And my main interest in that field is corporate emissions and what companies can do to reduce their emissions and hopefully also achieve business benefits from doing so. So the simulation that we'll be playing today really combines these 2 of my passions, which is corporate emissions and business strategy. and on the other hand, business simulation games. So I propose that for today, we will have the kind of session that you might have with your own learners, where we do a brief, where I will explain what the simulation looks like and give you any background knowledge that you need. And that then you will actually play the simulation for about 25-30 minutes. I will put you in breakout rooms so that you can communicate with each other, but everybody will get his or her own user ID, and you can play individually if you want, but you're in the breakout room. So in case you want to talk to people, ask questions, share experiences, then you can do so. And after playing, we will do a debrief. So we will discuss, I will answer any questions, we'll look at the results, and then I'll hand it back to Alex. Okay, so that's the idea for today. I will share my screen, first of all, with my web browser, if I can open the right one, and I will go to this page. Sian, can you see the Harvard page with the simulation?
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, excellent. So this simulation, like my other two simulations, is distributed to universities and colleges by Harvard Business Publishing Education. I think many universities, many of you will already have links with them. So, you know, as part of an existing relationship, maybe you'll be able to use it. Or otherwise, people can also come to me directly. The thinking behind the simulation is that we see today that a lot of organizations come with really ambitious goals about their emission reductions. They say, we're going to be net zero by 2050, or we're going to reduce our emissions by 50% over the next 7 years, or by 2030. And once they make these declarations, many of these companies don't actually know what to do next. They're sort of stuck and say, well, what do we do now? How do we actually keep track of our emissions? How do we know what initiatives we can implement that have a big impact and not a big impact? And this simulation has been designed, if I scroll down here to the learning objectives, to make people learn through experience that if you manage a company, then making large cuts in emissions is actually possible. You can reach large emission reduction goals. And as you do that, even if you use realistic assumptions, it does not need to go at the expense of business performance. So many managers will say, well, I'm all for being green, but it's going to cost me money. And this game will show people that actually it can benefit your business. People also learn that, you know, of course, choosing the right strategies for emission reductions makes you or requires you to think through all the options that you have available. And sorry, there's an animal outside me. I don't know if you can hear that. I hope this cat will survive. Okay, sorry about that. But also, you will learn in this game that reducing emissions requires involvement of all stakeholders. So that's the background behind the simulation. It won the gold medal at the Serious Play Awards. It came out in March of this year, and it's being used by business schools already all over the world, really. But it's still early days. But the uptake and the response so far has been positive. If I would have a class with you that covers this game, maybe I would take you through the briefing slides where I would recap knowledge about climate change, and I would explain to you how to play the game. Today, I will not use these slides. I will actually go straight into the game. So mainly in the interest of time. And as I do that, I go here straight to the welcome page. Sian, you can see the welcome page, is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so on this welcome page, you are being told that in this game, you manage a 4-star city center hotel. So we all know something about hotels. We've been there. We imagine something about how they work. And you're the manager of this hotel. Your goal is to reduce the hotel's greenhouse gas emissions by 50% over a 7-year period, while at the same time managing the hotel's financial performance. There's not a particular profit target, but your goal is at least for profits not to go down. And at the same time, you also need to stay within a carbon budget. So the idea of a carbon budget will allow you to explain to students that, you don't want companies to come with ambitious goals and then do nothing for 5 years, and then the last year come to a dramatic reduction in emissions. No, you want actually emissions to be minimized throughout the period. So these are the 3 objectives of the game. Reduce emissions by 50% on an annual basis, keep profitability at least stable, and stay within the carbon budget. If this game is part of a course that deals with climate change, then here on the climate change page, you have the essential information that students would need to know in order to play the game. So maybe you've covered this already as part of your course, but it's like a recap that's available for people. So it's explained here that, emissions lead to greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, which lead to climate change. It's explained that we have different sources of greenhouse gases, so CO2 being the most important, but also methane and others. And then there are different activities or drivers that lead to these emissions. And the ones here for our hotel, the main ones I mentioned, electricity, petrol, water, waste, and food. And all of these are based on, let's say, the best possible assumptions that we could find. In the game, there is a process of the greening of the grid, which is by 3% per year. So the carbon intensity of electricity is going down by 3% per year, and the facilitator can change that number if desired. Then there's a short video that explains climate change. The scope 1, 2, and 3 concepts are explained. The Paris Agreement is explained. And here the idea is really to say that now many companies, including the US and the UK and European countries, have said they want to reduce emissions by 50% by 2030. So if that is to happen, then the people and organizations responsible for emissions must do the same. So that means really, if you're a hotel in the UK or in the US or anywhere else, you want to contribute to your country's emission reduction goals, then you must reduce your emissions by the same number as that goal, which tends to be 50 or 55%. In the game, offsets are not allowed, but just mentioning it here gives you an opportunity to talk about offsets, but you cannot, in the game, buy your way out of the problem and pay others to reduce their emissions. So that's the essential climate change information that people need. There's also a glossary of terms here that people can consult at any time where the main terms are explained. Then if I go back to the welcome page, I can then move on to your challenge and see how the game works. So it's mentioned to me again, I manage a successful 4-star hotel with 500 rooms, 2 restaurants, and a gym. The hotel has a fleet of 5 cars, laundry is done in the house, and there are no meeting rooms. The business is doing well, and throughout the game, the business environment doesn't really change. You're not going to go through some recession or boom or things like this. All of your efforts and decisions are aimed at reducing emissions. There's no other noise around it, really. The hotel hasn't done much about sustainability in the past. It has done a baseline measurement. I'll tell you about the location choices in a minute. But if your hotel is based in New York, then in the base here, you emitted 4,400 tons of CO2 equivalents. And here in these charts in the middle one, you see that electricity is the main reason for these emissions, followed by petrol, water, waste, food, and purchasing. And then the chart on the left breaks down the electricity consumption. And as you might expect, the rooms, airco and heating, and rooms other, so the fridge and the hot water and lighting, they account for the bulk of electricity consumption in the hotel. And this is again is based on benchmark data from a company called Greenview. On the right, you see the emissions by scope. Your challenge, I've already explained it, so I will not mention it again. And then when I have reviewed this or maybe explained it to my students, I'm ready to play the game. There is, by the way, also a student video that you might want to show people either in class or maybe instead of doing the game explanation. At the start of the game, you can choose the location of your hotel, and all the model parameters change based on the location. So, for example, in London, the carbon intensity of electricity is lower than in New York, and that's reflected in what people experience in the game. I can give the hotel a name, which is a little bit of a gimmick. So I'll call it the Prime Hotel, and I'll see that later on during my game. So then I'm ready to make my decisions. And here it is explained to me what kind of decisions I can make. And each year of the game, I can adopt 3 initiatives that I think will help me reduce emissions. And I can also decide how much money I spend on staff training and guest communication. So the initiatives are split between 3 categories: energy, purchasing, and management. But if I want all of my 3 initiatives to be in the energy category, then I can do that. Or I can do 2 in energy, 1 in purchasing, and 0 in management. I can divide it any way I like. So when I'm ready, I will click on energy. And I see here the initiatives that are available to me in the first year. And the first one that shows up is solar rooftop. Now I'm in the city center, my roof is not so big, but I can put some solar on it, and this will generate some energy for me. But of course, also there's embodied carbon involved in purchasing and installing the solar panels. And of course, it will cost me some money. So all of that is described here. If I like that initiative, I will click it, and I can move down and I can go and see what LED lighting is all about. And I can replace my cars with electric vehicles, and I can implement electricity generating gym equipment. So this is where you cycle and then the light goes on. That might not make a big difference, but that's also part of the learning, that people understand or get to analyze which initiatives would have a big impact on emissions and which ones don't. After I've reviewed this, I can look maybe at purchasing, and I see there I can I can install water efficient appliances, and it's explained to me what that does. I can put refillable soap and shampoo bottles instead of the single-use doses. And I don't know, let's take one of these. Under management, like I said, I can implement initiatives, but I can also decide how much I spend on staff environmental awareness training. And I get some guidance here in terms of what would be a reasonable amount. And I can also decide how much I spend on guest environmental awareness communication. And these things are there also to emphasize that reaching your sustainability goals isn't only about technical solutions like new equipment, but is also about behavior change. So these 2 decisions here will, of course, impact behavior. Then I can recruit a sustainability officer, and this can be a useful class discussion about what that would do for a company. And I get a little warning because this is actually the 4th initiative that I'm choosing, and I'm only allowed to do 3. So I will deselect this one for now, and I can do some other things: food waste composting, recycling bins. Once I've done that, I can review all of my initiatives in the summary, and I can still make any changes that I like. So I don't know, I can delete this one and maybe add this one. The tooltip here will give me an explanation of each initiative, again, using the same text as before. And once I am satisfied with my initiatives, let's see if I want to stay with this. Actually, just for illustration purposes, let me make this one change here. And then I will enter my decisions for year one, and I can review my results. In the dashboard, first, I get information that my CO2 equivalent emissions have gone down by 8%. My profit has gone up just a little bit. And I get some specific feedback on the initiatives that I took in written form. Then I see here what happened to my electricity consumption. It's gone down nicely. I see here my emissions for the year. They've gone down, I think we said, by 8%. And you see that here compared to the horizontal line, the dark blue line, and that represents our target. So really, the main goal of the game is that you get that light blue line to cross the horizontal line before the game is up. And then the profit didn't change much. I have 3 more detailed dashboards. Under consumption, I can see the electricity consumption, water consumption, and waste generation. Under emissions, I see again on the left the same graph that I saw before, which is my annual emissions versus the target. In the middle, I also see my cumulative emissions. So all of my emissions for the entire game added up until now compared to the carbon budget. So here I want that dark blue line to stay under the horizontal line because I want to stay within my carbon budget. And then finally, I see my emissions by scope. I may also be interested in some information about financial performance. So I see 3 graphs here. RevPAR is revenue per available room, which is a performance measure in the hotel industry. But I also see a simple income statement. It's not too complicated, and an operating cash flow. Maybe I will just very quickly, again, highlight the emissions because there's a table under it also that shows the sources of emissions. And analyzing this allows people to look at what are the main sources of emissions, and then they can think, well, you know, now I understand where I need to take action. If our location is in London, then actually water doesn't generate a lot of carbon emissions. In Singapore, if that's your location, then that number would be much higher. So that's worth looking at. Very quickly, before I give you your usernames and passwords, if I go to year 2, I just repeat the same cycle. I see on the top right here, the initiatives I've already selected in the past, so I cannot select them again. On the left, I see the initiatives that are still open to me. And then each year, I will see 1 or several new initiatives. And they are marked here with the word new. And therefore, the list of initiatives that you can choose from, it just continues to expand. This is to avoid that people get overwhelmed with a list of 30 initiatives right in the beginning. You get them gradually. So then, you know, I can again make my choices and submit them, review my results, and that cycle repeats until I've completed 7 years, and then hopefully I will have done well and reach my targets. So that's how the game works. Are there any questions at this stage?
I actually do have a question. In terms of the management initiatives, how, I guess, what's the methodology behind that? How do you determine how much is impacted by, you know, information sharing with your employees or with guests?
Right. So this is difficult to come to an answer to on a scientific basis. But in the debrief slides, it is explained to people that, first of all, training your staff has a slightly bigger impact than communicating with your customers. So training staff and the behavior changes that they have will make a bigger impact. And this is also what research has shown. On the other hand, spending on training your staff wears out more quickly. So if you spend on guest communication, it will be because maybe you have an internet website or you put signs in the bathroom for people to use their towels different times. So that spending on guest communication, it stays for longer. And then finally, at some point, if you spend a lot, then you have diminishing returns. So whether you spend, I don't know, $150,000 or $200,000, at some point, it doesn't make much difference anymore. But a specific answer to your question is really, you know, we put in numbers that we thought was reasonable, and then the overall picture ends up being reasonable also. But it's difficult to prove scientifically, like with some of the more technical solutions.
Figured that was difficult to quantify, but thank you.
Yeah, sorry, maybe that was a long answer to say that it's difficult to quantify. So I'm sorry about that. Okay.
Yes, I have a question, Tim. You in the model, scope 2 is the largest concentration of impact, and I wonder if you could speak about that. Is it specific to this industry, and what were the decisions related to that?
Yes. So you will experience the decisions that relate to it. If I open again, indeed, you're right. Now I've changed the location to London, so there actually electricity is a little bit of a smaller part, but it's still more than half. And again, the benchmark data shows this. And I don't know what's your expectation, but I would think this is true in many industries, right? That your own energy consumption is responsible for the bulk of your emissions. In some industries, I would imagine scope 3 can be even bigger, right? The purchasing or the value chain emissions. But generally, you know, if you look at it at a very basic level, then, you know, most of our emissions, the vast majority, come actually from energy usage. And that's then reflected if you break it down at an organizational level.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, so I will break you up in groups of maybe 5 or 6 people. I will circulate and try to help you. You don't have to speak to each other, but you may. I will follow your progress online, and then I will give you like a 5-minute signal when we are about to reconvene. I see a message that some people want to be in the same breakout room. So what I'll try and do is first I will assign you randomly, and then I will try to move people around a little bit so that those who want to be together can be together. Good. So let me share with you your usernames and passwords, and then in the chat, I will post a link. So here you see everybody's first name ordered alphabetically. So Nicole, for example, is here, and she is as a username PRME38, right? And Alex is PRME3. If somehow you are an intruder in this meeting and didn't register, then you can use PRME 58 or 59 or 60. But if you do that, then just maybe put in a chat that that's what you're doing, so that nobody else is taking the same the same username. For everybody, by the way, the username is not case sensitive. The password is case sensitive, and for everybody it's the same. It's net zero sim as one word. So then, if we are ready, then I will copy now the link to the login in the chat, and I will break you up into breakout rooms, and let's come back roughly on the hour. Okay, when the hour on top of the hour. Okay, hope you enjoy. Good luck, and I'll circulate around. Oh, great. Thank you, Sian.
No problem.
You're doing it for me. Are you able to move the people around according to the preference?
Yes, so I grouped that group of people together.
Oh, you've already done that. Fantastic. Thank you.
Yep, and then you guys should see the option to like join various groups.
Okay. So Tom, you have not joined your group yet.
Yeah, there's a group of us from Conestoga that are trying to get into the same breakout room, and I just don't know if it's possible.
So can you mention somebody in that?
Yeah, so Rajul and Laura Matheson.
Okay. Should be there now.
Okay. Alex, how are we doing so far? Oh, I ask him and then he goes. Okay, everything going okay, I think?
Yes. Yes, all is good now.
Okay, thank you. Welcome back, people who are back. Others will join shortly. Good. I think now everybody else is joining, right? 20 people here. 21. Great. Welcome back, everybody, and thanks for playing so enthusiastically. I really enjoyed following your progress. Before I share the results, let's see what kind of comments or questions you have about the experience. Anybody, maybe just raise your hand so we can allocate the floor easily. Yeah, Nicole?
The only thing that I guess was surprising, but I think I started off without reading in enough detail, was I focused just on energy in the first year and didn't see as much savings as I would have expected. It was under 2% actually. And then when I kind of had more of a mix in the second year, already that went up like it was 18% reduction in overall emissions. So
Good. But Nicole, did you in the first year purchase these solar panels?
I did the solar panels, the LED lighting, and now I'm forgetting what else.
Right. Because if you do the solar panels the first year, your emissions will not go down much because you're, let's call it, paying for the embedded carbon in the panels.
I see. That'll
That's
explain
why
it.
you didn't do well, right? In the, you sort of, you know, some politicians, you know, they like to point out that there are a lot of emissions involved in making solar panels, and that's true. But at some point, like, you earn them back, of course, through the renewable energy that you generate. Yeah, great, thank you.
Actually, well, on that, one other question. I don't know if this, I know it's only for 7 years, but does it take into account the end of life of solar panels? Because only recently I've been learning that there's no really good way to recycle or reuse them. I think now there's some interest in repurposing solar panels, but after about 20 years or so, it's just going to landfills.
True. So the answer is the game doesn't take that into account. And I would say, you know, every game has boundaries and, you know, let's call it limitations. But if a student would make that comment in my class, I'd say, you know, that's a great comment, and you can have a whole discussion about that in class. Yeah, but that aspect is not in the game, exactly because you say the game is shorter than the lifespan of the panels.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yes.
Just on that topic, what is the assumption in the game of the payback for the carbon investment in the solar panels?
Right. So the I just need to get from the top of my head how much carbon was involved again in making the panels. So I might need to look that up. I think it was the short answer is it pays back in the second year. In the second year. But in Singapore, it pays back more in the second year than in New York. And in New York, it pays back more than in London because the production in all of the 3 locations is different. But in all 3, you become, let's call it, positive in the second year. Yeah. Anybody else with comments or questions? Are you curious to see your results? Jill, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Tim. I had a fascinating conversation with Nicole and with Darren. And I think that I presume that the simulation itself gives you an indication of how much time, because I felt there was so much information to kind of take on board. And it was only when Nicole and Darren said, oh, I think you should read the details of the choices you're making. It's like, you hardly have time the first time you go through it. So I was certainly almost using it by, oh yeah, the water one is important and the solar panels are important, but you've got so much information in this. What is your sort of recommendation in terms of how long are really worth a session would last, or do you recommend that you allow students to run it a second time once they've kind of got the feel and have got the results? What would you suggest?
Yes. So what you've now done in 25 minutes, I would usually give students an hour to do. So you do the brief, but then the play would usually be an hour, and then the debrief. And certainly, I would always recommend that the first time you play with people, you play when you're with them, either on Zoom or physically, but you don't let them do it just by themselves. But after they've done it once, then they can do it by themselves or in groups outside class. And you can either get them or encourage them to play in the same location and see if they can improve their score. Or you can say, maybe choose a different location and see what difference it makes.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you.
Related to that, is the per person fee related per use or one-time registration?
No, the fee is per use, and through HBP, you then have as a student unlimited use for, I think it's 6 months.
Okay, thank you.
So what some people do is they might use it in the beginning of the semester, and then they teach, and then at the end of the semester, they use it again using the same license.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it's unlimited use per individual license for that period. Great. So thanks for your comments. Let me share with you my facilitator screens. And the first thing that you may be interested in is to see the class results. I appreciate not everybody had time to finish the 7 years, but hopefully you've been able to do enough to get an impression. It's just hanging a little bit. I hope my internet isn't giving up on me. Let me just refresh that again.
Is this a facility that we would have access to if we were doing this with our classes?
Exactly. Yes.
So there's a facilitator access mode as well.
Exactly. So I will now just log back in. If you can see my screen, actually I've given myself a facilitator ID that I will use for me. And I have here different screens available. One is a video just for me as an instructor, and then also the student video. If I go to class results, and now it works better, I can see everybody's results. So I see here the time that the game was played, the name of the learner, the location, with 1 being New York and 2 London and 3 Singapore. How many years did the student play? And then the performances. So change in electricity consumption, change in emissions, which is the main one, and then how much of the carbon budget was used, and a change in profit. I can sort the results. So I can see here that sorting them by change in emissions, Rubana has done the best. Right? Congratulations, you achieved a 49% reduction in emissions. Well done. I see Jill and Jeff clapping. And Viswas has done almost as well, and Dana also, and Darren. And I can see here all of these people have played the game for 7 years. So it's not actually easy to reach the target. And part of the learning is also to say, well, if Rubana achieved a reduction of 49%, is that a failure? And the answer is clearly no. You know, that's like an amazing reduction in emissions. And this whole 50% target is just there almost as an artificial goal to make sure that we do as well as we can. If I want, Dana, go ahead.
Sorry, so I think I could have probably, I'm number 3 there, but I started to panic in year sort of 5 because I didn't see any opportunities to increase the revenue line. They were all opportunities to decrease the expense line. And I'm wondering if, like, I could think about my MBA students who are just, you know, profit. There was nothing really embedded in years sort of 1, 2, 3 where they could have focused on profit.
Good. So Dana, you've increased profit by 13%.
Yeah, but if I was the CEO of that company, they would have fired me in year 3.
Well, we're here in in an environment without inflation, and you cannot build extra rooms. So it's really all the result of your sustainability initiatives. I wrote a case on IHG, the Intercontinental Hotel Groups, and their efforts to reduce emissions. And they explained to me that actually more and more individuals, but actually especially companies, are making their hotel purchase decisions based on sustainability characteristics. So if IBM or PwC, they buy hotel rooms for their staff, they will look in some database where they can look at the sustainability characteristics. So there are actually quite a few things, Dana, like the solar panels or other sustainability initiatives that will lead to a little uptick in your revenues. Maybe not, they will not double them because we need to be realistic, but they will lead to a little uptick.
I was late on the game on the solar panels because here in Ottawa, we don't have enough sun to
yes.
anything from.
So I will now, I've opened Dana's game by clicking on view. And we see here, your revenue per available room, it's gone up a little bit. And your profit has gone up. And this is, of course, again, a wonderful class discussion to have, is, to what extent can sustainability initiatives lead not only to cost reductions, but also to increases in revenue. And these are difficult to quantify, but it's good to talk about these. So I've now shown Dana's results. One thing that I didn't mention yet that can also be useful for students is, look, here the income statement or any other table is completely full because she completed 7 years. And students can just copy this to clipboard and then paste it into Excel and then use it for their own analysis or for their reflections or presentations that they might be given later. And that's the case for all of the tables. Jill, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Tim. Being the competitive person I am, but I try not to be, but when you are in a game, it just does seem, what from a cost benefit point of view are some of the big hitters, or does it depend on what year? Because I went for the solar panels thinking that would be, quite significant. I'm just interested, which are some of the most effective over the 7 years, which are some of the least effective?
Good. So for that, I open here the debrief slides. And you see here for energy, the high impact initiatives are indeed what you mentioned, the solar, the LED lighting, the electric vehicles, the air conditioning, and the windows. And for example, the electricity generating gym equipment is a gimmick. So if you're a facilitator, you will get these slides and they're in PowerPoint, so that enables you to edit them in any way that you like. And you can share these with students as you see fit. So in purchasing, there's only one really high impact initiative, and that's especially high in Singapore, which is the water efficient appliances. And then you have a number that are sort of okay to do. And some initiatives may look great for other environmental reasons, like eliminate plastic bottles, but the impact on emissions is there, but it's not huge. Then in management, the spending on training and communication is important. The recruit sustainability officer, there's another slide about that. You can have a whole discussion because maybe some of our students are interested in becoming sustainability officers after graduation. So it's always nice to talk about, what that does. And a simple behavior change like adjusting the temperature in the lobby is also significant. So these are the ones, and some of them they don't do much at all, like a sustainability report, or unfortunately actually giving the free parking and charging for EVs. It will not do much for your own emissions. So I think just to wrap up my side, but I'm happy to continue discuss as you wish. As a facilitator, there are a number of settings in the game that you can change. So imagine I am a facilitator, I set up a new run, and one thing I can do is I can allow students to choose their location between New York, London, and Singapore, like you've been able to do. But I can also choose the location for them so that everybody chooses or plays in the same location. And in addition, I can set up a completely new city, which may correspond to the city where you live. That's called My Town. So if I click on my town, then students will be seeing this picture. And I see here all of the important model parameters, and I can change them according to my circumstances. So the most important may be the emissions from electricity. Let's imagine that they should be higher. And the greening of the grid, I can change the number. I can change the electricity price and its development. I can change the emission factors from petrol, water, waste, and food, the embodied carbon from my purchases, and of course, I can change the efficiency of my solar panels. And if I then apply these settings, then that is the game that people will play. So that allows you to tailor it to any condition that you like. So with that, I think then you have most of the facilitator functions demonstrated to you. And Jill, tell me.
Sorry, me again. I come from Africa, so we are not going to get electric vehicles anytime soon by any stretch of the imagination. I was trying to just note what you said in terms of the facilitator settings. Can you adjust sort of the impact of electric vehicles at all? Because I heard you saying that you can adjust sort of costs and different factors. Is there anything that might take out the or reduce the electric vehicles item?
Yes. So purchasing the electric vehicles will save you petrol, right? So, but how much it saves you, that's a given, and it's given to you. Then what you can change is how much emissions are associated with that petrol. And you can also change how much emissions are associated with producing the electric vehicles. So how much, let's say you got penalized in the beginning for buying them in the first place. These parameters you can set if you design the city called My Town.
Okay. I think there's a lot of detail to